I want to thank you guys very much for coming today for this podcast. I think one of the main reasons why we're all here is because I decided that after having a lot of issues and the elephant in the room, ASR, concrete cancer, which is finding its way all over Central Texas into northern. I don't know about Houston right now, but I know Central Texas is the biggest culprit for this, for pool cancer or concrete cancer. First wanted to introduce Bo Barnett. He's with KB Custom Pools, and Ron Cooper. Ron is a insurance adjuster, and also he's building his own pool and his own house out of nothing but concrete and steel. And he's also running for mayor of Lakeway. So I wanted to get a little bit of insight into kind of what, and give the people a little bit of insight after I did my video that's kind of gone viral on our pool and our situation. Wanted to give a little bit of clarity to the situation that's kind of going on right now because, everyone's kind of been stuck in limbo per se, pool builders, the customers, and everything in between. So I wanted to kind of bring to light an ugly thing going on right now and to hopefully help people that feel like they're in the dark like I did myself. So thank you guys for coming. First and foremost, I guess we'll start with you, Bo. Let's give a little bit of insight into how long you've been doing what you're doing and kind of when ASR came into your life.
Okay. Well, again, Bo Barnett with KB Custom Pools. We've been in business for 15 years. I've been in the pool industry for almost 20 years now. Our company started in '07, and we built roughly around 400 swimming pools up until the time that I actually heard about ASR. We were contacted by a client that had some weird cracking that was going on. And we went out and we took a look at it, and it's something that we hadn't really seen before. We had seen cracks in pools with repairs and some of our own vessels that had small hairline fractures in corners or weak points that were easily repaired. But with the first pool that we went out to, we actually said, we don't know. We've never seen this before, but we're going to fix it. So what we ended up doing is we did a common crack repair with staples, which are forged steel staples that go over the crack, and then we epoxied them. We replastered. This was in a spa scenario. We replastered the spa. And everybody was super happy. Thanks for coming out and fixing it. Boom, boom, boom. And within 90 days, it looked like somebody had shattered a windshield of a car with a baseball bat inside that spa. And, that's when I started going, this isn't structural. This isn't normal. So at that point, we actually hired an engineer who came out and misdiagnosed what was going on. They actually told us they felt it was structural. And so we demoed a portion of that swimming pool and found the rebar was more than adequate for the structure. And at that point, that particular engineer kind of said, we need to take core samples. And so at that time, our client didn't want to take core samples because of the expense.
Yeah.
I reached out to an aquatic engineer in California. And I sent him pictures, and I sent him, and he said, I think I know what this is. And so, this took almost 12 months from the time we repaired the spa to the time that Dave and I had a conversation. He said, I think I know what it is. So at that time, during that 12 months, we had 3 or 4 other pools that had contacted us, and they had similar cracks. And so, we knew that this was not normal. We didn't understand why. So I reached out to 4 different engineers, mostly to get an education on what's going on. I spent some time with some engineers in California, and they mentioned alkali silica reaction, or ASR, most commonly known as concrete cancer. And so I went about intensively researching everything that had to do, with this to try to figure it out.
And this is 217, 218?
So I didn't find out about it until this was a pool that was built in 17, and we started identifying the defect around 19. So, about 3 or 4 years ago is when this whole process started. By the time we kind of figured out what was going on, we started actually coring pools that looked heavily damaged. And so it took almost 9 months to get the cores from the engineers to the labs, then the reports back, and then given back to us. So we're almost 2 years into this before we find out this is an alkali silica reaction. And that's when, when I found that name, I did every bit of research that I possibly could to figure out, is this preventable? Is this repairable? What are the properties that make this up?
What sort of magnitude are we talking about from a 2017 to a 2019? How many pools regionally are we think could be impacted by this ASR?
So we were fortunate enough to where our volume only dictates that we build about maybe 20 pools a year. Mm-hmm. So we're not a high volume builder.
What about globally for all the pool builders in the area?
Well, knowing what I know now, and knowing the reason alkali silica reaction happens, I would say that it's demographic specific. They're not having this issue in Arizona. They're not having this issue. They had it in California 20 years ago, but they mitigated that with legislation that demanded testing, and we don't have that in Texas. But to answer your question, I mean, in Central Texas, the two engineers that I've stayed in very close contact with, they both report that they've got over 250 cases apiece, just in the center Austin and surrounding areas. And so I feel like it's probably the liability I feel is probably
think it's in the thousands.
In the thousands.
Yeah.
And so when I got a video from AJ, and I got it sent to me from a bunch of realtors. I mean, my phone lit up when he sent that video, and they were like, "Do you know this guy? Check out this video." And so I texted him. I said, "Hey, call me," And from that video 2 weeks ago, I probably have seen at least 30 pools in Rough Hollow that look like they are, absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly. And so we definitely have an issue that's widespread. We have an issue that needs to be addressed. And going back to the legislative position, Texas is broken down to general and home rule cities. Once you get over 5,000 people, you're a home rule city. And, city council is the legislative arm. And these are things that legislation and at city council we should address. And there are things that we can mitigate for our citizens in Lakeway to prevent something like this from happening to them. One of the things being testing the concrete. And so how can we and what could we do, with the information now that you've learned, how could we be more proactive? How can we test? What are the steps that can be taken at the time of installation to minimize the exposure and other people from succumbing to an ASR issue?
And real quick, before we get into that, I do want to just kind of tell everybody, since we're on video and we're doing this, that, the disclaimer here is there is litigation going on, right? You have litigation, I'm in litigation. So if you don't feel comfortable answering something, I totally understand it. And I do appreciate that you're probably one of the only, if the only pool builder right now that I know that's actually talking to people. And I know that you've told me the reason why is because you just, it's not that you don't care. It's just like, it's got to suck to not talk to people, because when attorneys tell you, hey, you need to shut your mouth and not say anything, I look at that as a huge problem, because maybe we wouldn't be in this situation if they let you guys actually talk. Because 1 minute, you're having these pool issues. Why didn't my guy, you guys are all in the same business, you guys all use the same subs, why did my pool have to get screwed up because you're in litigation? You know what I mean? So
I understand that. I feel like, most of the attorneys are just trying to protect their client's interest,
totally,
and they don't want their client to say something that would put them in a position to lose. At the end of the day, I think that a lot of this started with, all of this started with ignorance. I don't believe that any of these pool builders were malicious in nature.
Sure.
Or building an insufficient structure on purpose. I don't feel like there's a lot of guys that are just out there completely cutting corners to the point to where pools are falling apart. I think to answer your question, how can we prevent this? How can we as a city legislate this? I think it's important to understand how this happens. Alkali silica reaction takes 3 key components for that actual chemical reaction to happen. Those 3 key components are water, a high pH, and reactive silicates, or reactive aggregates. What reactive aggregates means is bad sand or bad little rocks in the mix-up of the actual cement itself. We know that that's the case because most of the material is mined out of the Colorado River in central Texas. And unless you're going down to Victoria to get your sand, you're probably using something local. It's definitely going to be reactive. So those are one of the things that we really can't control unless we're spending a ton of money to bring in specific sand.
And when we say reactive, we're saying high in silica content.
Correct. Okay. Correct. The second is the high pH. And the high pH is 100% preventable, okay? The way that you would actually lower the pH of a concrete is to add fly ash, okay? Fly ash, in addition to lithium is another additive that you can use to lower the pH, but it's much more expensive than fly ash is. Over the last couple decades, because of the green energy movement, coal burning, which is what produces fly ash, has reduced by 80%. Yeah. So over the last 5-6 years, we've had a fly ash shortage. A lot of that has to do with coal burning. A lot of that also has to do with the amount of DOT work that's going on around Central Texas. All these towns are exploding. All this concrete work has gotten huge. Well, those guys have the engineers to sit on the side of the road and test the concrete before it gets laid. And foundation guys and pool guys, they don't have those types of resources. So when we had a fly ash shortage, we now are not adding the one thing that we can control to neutralize ASR, okay? The third thing is water. And for us as a pool builder, we are building aquatic vessels.
Right.
They are made to hold water. The shell of the pool does not prevent water intrusion. It actually contains water within the cement itself to a certain tolerance. And so what happens is when you have a high pH and you have reactive aggregate, and then you have a small itty-bitty leak somewhere. It can be a pinhole leak in your grout. It could be just a simple hydration crack that allows water in. It can also be a PVC, which is the weakest portion of all the products that we use, can have a molding defect, and a little bitty crack gets in the skimmer. Any of those things happen, it starts oversaturating the vessel. And once that oversaturation takes place and that water and that high pH and those aggregates meet each other, it's a perfect storm. It's extremely violent, and it expands. It creates a gelatin inside the actual concrete that expands all the way out. So what you initially see are small little spider web or alligator scale looking cracks, which will eventually turn into full thickness cracks. That's where you start seeing major water loss. That's where you're seeing,
And full thickness is all the way through.
All the way through the entire shell versus, surface cracks are normally less than an inch. And that's the process around it, okay? That's how it happens. How do we prevent it? What we have done is we make sure...
And we're talking about like from here going forward, because what's done is done.
Forward, now that we have the education, if someone purchases a swimming pool from me, the next steps in concrete management for us is to, number one, ensure that the concrete provider is selling engineered aquatic concrete. That's the first step. Second step is that aquatic mixture is going to make sure that fly ash is in there. The next step is collecting the actual batch sheet from the truck itself that pulls up. They have a sheet of what materials are in the back of that truck. We collect those or take pictures of those so that we know this is exactly what's in this mix. If it doesn't have fly ash, those guys are told to take the truck back. And so that's how we ensure it. On the larger platform, on the municipal platform, I believe that you could probably make the concrete providers who are selling to trade specific, like pool builders, that they are required to either test or manage that it is aquatic vessel concrete.
Is there resistance from the aggregate suppliers to provide the batch sheets? Is there resistance from the concrete providers to provide the chemical composition or the aggregate composition to you, the pool builder?
You wouldn't think so, but we had a total of 7 resources for shooting or applying concrete. Out of those 7, only 2 would provide us what we asked for.
So at a legislative position, and as far as, going through a permit process, something like getting those sheets and making it a part of your file and making it a part of your submittal, making it part of the inspection process for the city inspector to say, okay, show me your back sheets, make sure that, you have the appropriate composition here. These are things that we can learn, and implement, with the help, of the pool builders. And let me ask you this, is there any sort of co-op happening between you and the other pool builders in the area? Are you guys, saying, hey, this is our solution, this is how we're handling it? Are you guys working together? Because this is a bigger issue than just an isolated pool builder.
It is much bigger. What I've done, I'm on the board of directors for the Pool and Hot Tub Association. So we have quarterly meetings where we invite any pool builder to come in and get a free education on certain topics. The last 4 quarters have all included ASR training for any pool builder that wants to show up. And there's been a great response in Central Texas from concrete providers, pool builders, flat work guys. A lot of them have been showing up, and this is what we're telling them, is this is going on in Central Texas. Here's how to help prevent it. Waterproofing is another big key element of this that you can do as a builder to try to eliminate the water element from the ASR equation. It's extremely difficult they don't even call it waterproofing anymore. They actually call it water damming, because waterproofing is a little bit deceptive. There's no perfect way to completely waterproof a swimming pool vessel.
Water resistant.
Yes, right.
Less, right?
So,
like a watch.
So they have actually changed that term in our industry to water damming. But that can help. A dry concrete will help that situation. So there's things that we're teaching with epoxy applications as well as waterproofing membranes throughout the entire vessel that will help builders to, mitigate the ASR situation. But first and foremost, again, is making sure that you're getting the good concrete. That's the most important key.
Have you put a PowerPoint presentation together? Have you done any sort of documentation that you can share to the municipality, share to council? Because here's my fear. My fear is that it's more widespread than even what we know now, right? And AJ, I think you kind of went through a situation where you had a pool built recently. You tried to maybe potentially put your home up for sale, and you can't sell your home, or we fire sale the home, we lower the price way down. That affects taxes. That has a really big implication on the region as far as the economics, as far as taxation. This could be a big issue if it's every third pool in Lakeway has an ASR issue. This could have serious implications. Implementing inspection protocols, getting in front of this at a legislative with the city inspectors, I think it's important, not just in Lakeway, Dripping, and all your other cities. You pool builders should work together to bring this to the forefront to help these cities manage this.
And we're trying to do that in an education standpoint. Again, it's a pretty competitive market as far as like sharing resources and things of that nature. That there's not as much of that going on as what you might think.
Y'all need to read the book, The Go-Giver.
The Go-Giver.
Yes, The Go-Giver.
Write that down.
Yeah, I mean, it's... Go ahead. I
will say that the guys that have been affected, they're all starting to come together as this unfolds to try to go after who we all feel is the culprit in all this, which is the concrete provider.
Are all pool builders in the area suffering from the same effects?
No, because this is maybe one of 4 major concrete providers. So out of, you got to imagine there's probably 10,000 pools that are being built, in any singular year, around, if you take, all the way from Round Rock to San Marcos, it's a huge growth, over 2.8 million in Austin alone. So
we had the largest pool boom, I think in history, right?
Yeah,
in the last 2 years?
Since 19, our industry is up in this area 185%. So it's just been kind of an explosion, a perfect storm of a lot of income and tech money coming in that they've never been in Texas. It's hot. They want a swimming pool.
So is it just specific suppliers of the concrete that are the issue? And
Yes.
have we isolated those suppliers, and have we let them know that, these are issues?
Yes. We know which concrete, what concrete company remove the fly ash. We know which applicators remove the fly ash. I say we. I mean, there's 4 or 5 of us.
Is
that
there
know
a
this.
list? I mean, is this being shared? This is important information.
Well, again, because of the litigation, that's where nobody really has said anything. Now, I have shared this on individual terms with builders, and all of my clients that were affected, which are under 10, but the clients that were affected, they have that information because I feel like my client and I together are going to get better results than if they try to fight the provider of the concrete as well as the applicator as well as the builder. I think that is.
What's the risk that a pool is built tomorrow from materials that are susceptible to ASR?
There's zero risk for the people that have this education. I feel like because
let's assume nobody hears this today.
Right.
So what are the people that are supplying the aggregate without the fly ash? Are they still in production?
Yes.
And so today, if I decided to build a pool, there is an opportunity for me to get concrete or shotcrete or whatever aggregate you're building with proponents that are susceptible to ASR.
I haven't found any information that leads me to believe that the people responsible for this have stopped doing what they're doing.
Well, it's probably because we're all being sued or you guys are all in lawsuits and nobody's talking about it. I'm not in that scenario. I'd rather,
that's the reason why. And I called the pool builders that I knew. And the guy that built our pool, lost his livelihood. It's a terrible situation because his pool has it. Who the hell would build their own pool to destroy it? So when I started understanding that, then I really truly understood that there was a bigger problem here. And putting the video out was, it was emotional because I had it that nobody was talking to me. And the excuse I got all the time, which was an excuse, but at the same time, if a lawyer's telling you not to talk, and give the information that because it could hurt you or your business, they had to step out on a whim and just say, hey, man, this is what's going on. So I didn't hear about this until September and then had zero response from insurance, from the builder, from the pool builder. So I was being ghosted by every single person you can imagine. So finally, we had just had it as a family. We had to, remove all the water. And so when I put the video out there, my goal was to also say, I know that I don't think that this is just my builder. I think that I keep hearing from all these different people that are going through it. And the more I would talk to real estate agents, I would have them say, hey, this person over in Sweetwater is having it. This person in Falconhead has it, Ultimately, when I put it out there, now I have a list. And it's from Waco all the way here, and it's all different kinds of pool builders.
And they have reported cases in Dallas, too.
In Dallas, and I haven't heard of Houston, like I said, but by talking to the attorneys that I've talked to, and at the end of this, I'm going to give our attorney that they can call if they want to try to talk to an attorney about it. But ultimately, I think, my hope is for I don't want to scare people from building a pool. I don't want to scare people from trying to sell their houses. I don't want to scare people. I want people to be educated finally and to ask questions. People want to get angry, and when something like this happens, I was angry, but kind of gave it to God and just said, ultimately, what can we do with this information so that this doesn't happen to somebody else?
Yeah, but you got to look at it like I'm building a home. My home's got 1,000 yards of concrete. The walls, the floors, the slab, all concrete. When I was building that, that shell, we had a concrete shortage. Every road and bridge and everything in Texas is requiring concrete. And so the guy that was ordering my concrete had to go 2, 3, 4 layers deep into his supply chain to get the concrete delivered. What happens at his first 2 guys, maybe they're using fly ash and he thinks the 3rd guy and the 4th guy is also, but I've got bad mix because, you have a guy you like to use. That guy doesn't have any trucks. That guy doesn't have any concrete. You've got to pour, right? and you go to your third, fourth guy, and he's not on a do not use list because he's not using fly ash. That's how it happens.
Sure.
That's how mine happened, because our liability is really only for about 24 months, and the reason that it was the 24 months is that particular provider was our third team guy, but we had volume in that. We were a younger company 5 years ago, didn't have as many resources, so we were trying to grow. And so, again, we used this specific provider. He came very well vetted. I knew 5 other pool builders personally that said these guys do great work. There was no evidence that any of this was ever going to happen. And we didn't find out until a year after we stopped using them completely. We stopped using them just because our main guy purchased another provider and became much larger, and so we didn't really need a third team guy. They were taking care of everything that we did. It wasn't because we found out about ASR that we stopped using these guys. We were just lucky, to be perfectly honest. And once we found out about all this, that's where now I feel like, your question was, could it happen right now? And my answer was, I haven't found evidence to support that they're not still doing it. We've inspected pools, not of our own, but I've been getting a lot of calls too since that video of pools that were built in 2022 that already have it, that they're less than a year old and they already have it. Which leads me to believe whoever's using that company right now are putting in bad concrete as we speak.
So think about this, Bo. What should the homeowner that just had their pool built over the last couple of years, after they hear this video or hear this podcast, what's the first thing they should do? Should they call their pool builder and say, hey, where did the concrete come from?
Yes. The first thing they should do is call their builder and ask them specific questions. Where did you get the concrete from? What is the warranty on my concrete? And what's your insurance provider? Those are the 3 things that a homeowner needs to know. Who's your insurance with? What company did you use for the concrete? Okay. And what is your warranty claim? Then what they need to do, if they see that they have this cracking, they need to spend the money to go get a petrographic analysis, which can cost up to $10,000. But it is the only way to actually test the concrete and get an unequivocal evidence to support whether it has ASR or not. What that process is they cut a hole in the pool about the size of, a bottle.
Core drill it.
Core drill it. That's exactly right. They send it to the lab. The lab breaks it open, and then they get a microscope, and they can tell microfractures, things of that nature, what the aggregates make it of. They can test every aspect of it, and it does take time. It does take time, but that is the only way to prove you have it.
Concrete company or the insurance company, in a sense, pay that money, though?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because I have a lot of people that have called me, and they're like, found my name because of asking how I need to get an engineer report. Because the first thing you think of is my pool's made like crap, right? That's what everyone thinks until they saw the video, and now they're like, oh, crap.
It's a fortuitous trigger, though, with insurance. So you have to have something that triggers a peril or something that you're insured against to trigger this. The insurance companies are not just going to pay for insurance or an engineer because there's no issue here. So you have to have some sort of accident, some sort of event that triggers the insurance company to get involved. And what you guys are talking about is a third-party insurance provision where his liability insurance, now you're triggering his liability insurance, right, third-party wise. And those contracts are tough. It's not first party. It's not dealing with your homeowner's insurance policy, right? So, there's elements to this that aren't just as simple as you think. And that's how I've kind of heard about this is I keep getting calls from homeowners saying, hey, man, does my policy cover this? And I have yet to find one that does.
And Ron, you're right about that, because on our insurance, we weren't able to actually trigger our insurance to take action until we could prove it was irreparable.
That's right.
We tried to repair these pools. We spent tens of thousands of dollars putting on new plaster and doing all the things that a normal structural issue would ask for to remedy. And it didn't work on any of them.
So wouldn't it be cheaper, though, for y'all to actually do the core sample as a pool owner
but
versus trying
we
to
were
fix?
doing repairs before we found out what the issue was.
I'm saying now, right? So like right
Oh,
now, if it were to
100%.
happen, it'd be way better for you to go like, hey, hell, we're just going to get a core sample, send it away. It's got ASR.
That's
move
what-
move on.
and
The
that's what
burden
we
is
do.
on the homeowner. The burden is on you
Okay.
to prove that you have an issue. Okay, and once you prove your burden, then things take place. Once you prove that you do have an issue, then it's his issue or the concrete supplier's issue. Now you have fact, right? But in Texas, the burden is solely on the homeowner or the asset owner, and it's a tough thing to prove, and it's expensive. You're talking $9,000 to put a hole in your pool,
And it could say inconclusive.
right? Yeah,
And
so-
I've heard of a bunch of people that have done it, and it comes back as inconclusive.
Now, I
but
will
their
say
pool's
this:
cracked apart.
most people are getting simple ASR tests done, which is a chemical additive that they basically put on a core to see if there's a reaction. Those are normally inconclusive.
Who does those?
There's several engineering firms.
Okay.
There's some, and again, we can put those on the link or whatever.
Okay.
I'm more
That'd
than
be
happy
great.
to share all that. But when they do a petrographic analysis and it goes to a lab, it's normally not inconclusive. That's what you're paying the big bucks for. It's under $1,000 normally to get a simple test done, which sometimes will come back and say, yeah, you definitely have ASR. But sometimes it says, well, there's some evidence to say that there is, but it's inconclusive evidence. Whereas on the petrographic analysis that we've gotten done, there is no doubt about what's going on under that microscope.
Now, I guess it would be fair if you go and you spend the $9,000 and it comes back as ASR, and then it's like what's the next step, right? And the next step is obviously you then can go to insurance. I'm guessing
That's
from
what
the
we've
pool, right?
what we've advised is to go to insurance. Now, as our insurance is taking those steps with our clients, we are aggressively pursuing the concrete company and the applicator. Because again, we were under the understanding that we were being provided aquatic concrete and nobody ever said anything different. So, I mean, we feel the applicator has liability there, and we feel like the concrete provider has ultimate liability because, again, they removed an admixture that had been there forever, and they changed the dynamic of that concrete. There was no newsletter. There was no, hey, guys, there's a fly ash shortage, and we're reducing our fly ash by 10%. Nobody had any information like that. It was just business as usual. And so, again, the reason the education part of this is so important is that there's a lot of guys that are just doing business as usual right now.
So let's just hypothetically say a guy's about to have his pool poured tomorrow. I know there's a guy in the peninsula that I was just with, earlier this week that he's having his pool done right now. Is it safe to say that if he can't confirm that there's fly ash in that mix, that he could potentially have a problem?
100%.
So is the identifier of fly ash, if we say, okay, fly ash good, no fly ash bad, is it as simple as that?
Really, what you need is 25% grade T fly ash in a shotcrete application, and you will need 10% grade T fly ash in a gunite application.
So
The
25 and 10.
25 and 10. The reason that you use higher fly ash in a shotcrete environment is that the aggregate size is much larger than the sand that they use in gunite. So you have to have less fly ash in the gunite, and you have to have more fly ash in the shotcrete.
And I think, AJ, if you guys are putting out documentation, I think that needs to be the first thing that you put out. If you're building a pool tomorrow, you got to have 25 and 10, and if you don't have that or they can't confirm that, I would stop production.
And well, let me ask you this because this is another question I've gotten.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll go to the other one, but first, since we're on this topic, so let's just say your neighbor is finishing their pool right now, and you had said that you guys do a separate whatever. Would it behoove them to? Is it easy to get? Like you said, some people want to give you that information and some don't. Is it easy to go back and go, oh, wait, before we shoot the gunite, can we get the piece of paper, the pink slip or whatever showing
the
that?
bat sheet? It's
The bat
easy
sheet.
to get if you get it before, if you get it the day of.
Yeah, when
I'm
the
saying
truck,
they've already
when the
poured.
truck is there. So he's pulling it right from the truck.
But
Right.
the question I'm getting is, they just poured.
It's already
It's
done.
already done.
Now I would
at least
this
no
is
tiles
pure,
on,
This
you know?
is pure speculation, but I feel like the concrete provider or the applicator will still have record of those batch sheets.
Okay.
Period. Whether you can get your hands on them or not, that may be a little bit more difficult. Like I said, out of 7 providers, only 2 of our providers said, yeah, we'll work with you and make sure that you get what you need.
Okay, so let's say we're building with the other 5, right? And we're talking about contracts here, and you guys have contracts with your clients. You guys, you spray your targets, or you create a core, right? You form the pool, you shoot the pool's sitting in green for 28 days, 30 days while you're curing it, essentially, right?
Yep, correct.
So why can't we take that target, or why can't we take a core or a cylinder and have it looked at the same way we would have a core that we take from the pool 2 years later looked at to say, hey, is this...
You most certainly can, but you have to fund that up front. And you have to be transparent to your client as a builder that, hey, it's going to cost $10,000 and possibly 4 to 8 weeks longer to ensure you don't have defective concrete.
So why don't we make a position, maybe even with the legislation, it says the shotcrete applicator has got to provide a sleeve or
if
a
you
cylinder.
No,
just
business
a cylinder.
Here, right? In Lakeway?
Yeah, if you want to, we need a cylinder, okay, to someday test. Okay, and so if your pool in 2 years starts to fall apart because you didn't get your fly ash percent, now you have a cylinder to send out and test that's from your pool.
That's right. Just keep it in your garage.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's
now,
a small cylinder.
I would say that. I would say this. They're going to shoot a test sample, right? So they're going to shoot into 8 inches of this little form board, and that's going to give you the compressive strength, which is going to show you how fast it came out of the gun, and then it's going to show you what's inside of it. You can definitely keep that sample. What would be easier for legislation is to require aquatic concrete and acquire those batch sheets, because those are coming anyway. Those are already being done every single day. To shoot these tests, and then if that core were compromised for some reason, and 2 years later you can't use it for whatever reason, it got flooded, or I ran over it with a car, or whatever happens, then you're still having to core out of your pool. You always have your pool to core from. It's not that big of a deal, honestly, to core it and repair it.
But what he's saying though is it's like $1,500 if you provide the core, or
$2,700. They said
exactly
if you provide your core, or $9,000 to $12,000.
Yeah, so if we already had that core on hand, and then you didn't have to deal with the stress of 15.
Can't you do the both?
Yeah, so what they do in a test, what they do in that 12 by 12 is they just take the core out of the test sample. So yeah, if what I would do is just keep the test sample, put it in the attic, put it wherever, and then if you ever need it, they'll core right out of that. You literally can go to Home Depot, get a 2-inch core bit, and it'll pull it right out, and then you put that in a bag and send it to a lab.
From every one of my lifts, and that's kind of the term they use when they're pumping in concrete. From every lift, I have a cylinder from each truck, and I still have them in my house.
Well, you know what
and I wrote down on it where it came from, who delivered it. That's just the way I do business, and it's just good business practices for me. But I have those at my house sitting in my garage right now.
And the reason it's harder for us to provide cores is, remember, we're not pouring concrete. I could pour concrete into this cup and make a cylinder very easily. It's very hard at 5,500 psi to pour into it. That's why they shoot into a little bit larger form board, and that's also why they can test the compressive strength.
Same principles, right? Same thing.
Exact same.
But I think it's a good business and a good process for perspective. The guys that already have the issues, I feel sorry for, right? My empathy's out to them.
Yeah.
But we do these videos and we take these stands so that we can prevent it from happening to somebody else.
100%.
And I think that there are things that we can just derive from this call today that can make effective change. And that's what my objective for being here today is the next guy.
And that's exactly why I wanted you here, because I think that like I said, my pool, I don't know what the hell's going to happen. Right? I don't know if the lawsuits are going to work. I don't know. My pool builder's out of business. A couple of things I wanted was, one, to take it to the people to say, if you have questions, no, Bo is not going to be able to come to your house. And people call me. I told them in the video, I'll come to your house and look. If it looks a lot like mine, then you might have it. You know what I mean? Went to a lady's house yesterday, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you might be able to waterproof that and fix everything and just call your pool builder.
But AJ, you got to think.
You got to fix
these
something
are
down the road
engineering
here.
things. We should have engineers doing this.
Right.
We get a list of good engineers in the region that have this education.
Yep.
Inspectors.
Give those
Yep.
to the people. It's
We don't have time to do all that. And so ultimately my thing is I want to help everybody get this out as much as I can, get educated. I know it's going to put pressure on the concrete companies to go, oh crap, this is going to, hopefully get on the news. This is what I want. Not to destroy someone's business, but to make them change to do the right thing, because I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. It's horrible.
I agree with you, and from the other side, I don't want anyone that's trying to start a business in Austin, Texas, to be blindsided by this, because we've built our reputation on word of mouth and craftsmanship, and trying to build the very best pool in the world. People laugh when I say that, but my education surrounds trying to build the best aquatic vessel that's ever made. And to be blindsided by something like this, a variable that there is no possible way that I could have foreseen or controlled, it's just a setback, and we're going to prosper through this. And my only hope is that everybody that was affected by this is 100% made whole. Again, I've sat down with children that their parents are crying and they're crying, and I don't know what to do as a builder, because I didn't cut any corners. I didn't do anything that would put me in a position to have profited from their loss. I have folks in my own neighborhood that are dealing with repairs right now. And I see these people at HEB. This is not something that is easy for a builder to go through. When you feel like, as a consumer, as AJ, you feel like you've been taken advantage of from a builder, you're going to lose trust in that person, whether they're being trustworthy or not. And I've lost trust with some of my clients because I did not have the answers. And so we want to prevent this for everyone involved, for the builders involved, for the clients involved, for the investment guy that came in and, bought this house, and now he's got this pool, and oh my God, it's going to cost $300,000 to replace it. This is only a $100,000 pool. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And that's what's been difficult for everybody involved. And it's a very emotional thing, because this, for a lot of people, is the biggest investment they make beside their home. And so it's very scary. And I think, education is a huge part of getting on top of this. And then hopefully, like I said, Ron can help us to implement some things that will, keep builders on the right track, and then also help the consumer to protect their investment.
As I'm hearing this story, and meeting you guys, the analogy that comes to mind kind of goes like this. You go out to a 5-star restaurant, you order the most expensive thing on the menu. It looks great, it's prepared, it goes through the chef's checks and balance system before it gets to your plate. You eat it, it's delicious, you're so satisfied with your meal. The next day you wake up, you have food poisoning. You didn't know that you were eating something that was, going to make you sick, right? You didn't know, he didn't know. The pool builders don't know that they're building pools with materials that's going to make their pool sick. Right? It's something that happens, and it took them 2 years to figure out what it could potentially be, and we're still trying to figure out how to mitigate against it. And so that's really what's going on here. Is when I hear people talk about construction and standards, it's always workmanship and workmanlike, which means that the product has to be qualified of a warranty. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to give them a warranty, but the work has to be done to the standard that a warranty could be given. Right? And so if we're building these pools and he's like, here's your warranty, I've done this in a workmanlike manner, I'm very happy with my work, it's going to do what it's intended to do, and then later it fails, those are issues. And a lot of times it's not the guy building it, but the supply chain issues and the materials that they're built with. And I think that's the biggest issue here.
And how can we in the future, obviously, fix that or do our best to hopefully get through that and have checks and balances, because in Texas it is the Wild West. It truly is when it comes to builders. Anybody can build a damn pool.
Lakeway isn't the Wild West.
They're strict, but you can still build a pool. I know people, and I'm not saying names, that have just built a pool, like literally got insurance and just built a pool.
I will say,
and they did a good job.
Out of all the municipalities that I've dealt with, I feel like the most checks and balances are coming out of Lakeway.
Oh, yeah. They
Austin's,
take forever.
Austin's, and it's not just, and I know that as a consumer, you guys see it and you go, oh my goodness, it's 3 or 4 months of this stuff that we're going through all these things from the time that we get HOA and permits and then all these inspections. However, you can go in Hayes County right now as an LLC, and all you got to do is have $1 million general liability insurance policy, and you can go build whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can go do a 3 or 4 inch thick wall if you want to. You can do literally anything that you want because there is no legislation around it. Whereas Lakeway, hey, if you have a wall that's over 24 inches tall, it has to be structurally engineered.
Right.
That keeps guys out of your backyard building 8, 9, 10, 15-foot pools that don't know what to do. And that's a scary thing because that happens. So Lakeway mitigated that by saying, no, we're not going to, you may be a new pool builder, but you're going to get this structural engineer to tell you exactly how to do it, whether you're new, old, no matter what. And that's one of the things that I think is very commendable about the city of Lakeway. Yeah. And, most young pool builders don't like that. They don't want that red tape. They don't want those checks and balances. But the guys that know what's going on and they have that education, they understand the relevance. They understand how important those checks and balances are so that they don't have to go repair a bunch of pools that are just falling apart because guys are learning.
Right.
They're in that first 5 years of being in business, learning how to do it the right way. And every new business owner goes through that learning process. But if you're in an area that already has those checks and balances, you're not going to make the mistake that you would have in an uncontrolled environment.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that this ASR is probably not on Lakeway's radar. I'm sure that they.
I think it is now.
Right. Well, I'm sure it probably was before, but if it's not, it is now.
It is now.
And I think the pool builders, need to have a summit with, Lakeway and say, hey, this is what we're seeing and this is how we mitigate against it. And you're right. When you have order of operations at your back and you're building a pool, a $100,000 pool can turn into a $300,000 reconstruction. I mean, we got cabanas, we've got landscaping, we've got all sorts of issues that we didn't have to deal with before. And again, with your home, you have an issue, you have a homeowners insurance. A lot of these policies are excluding pools. A lot of the policies exclude inherent vice, latent defect. These are things in policies, anti-current causation that, maybe not help you. And they're going to have to point that to as an exclusion. The silica exclusion in your third-party insurance there. It was intentionally for ingestion, but it's a silica exclusion, and they may point to that and say, this is a silica issue, and we have a silica exclusion.
Right. And the silicas were actually made for inhalant for like asbestos situations, to where you have to wear a mask so you're not inhaling pollutants.
Okay.
Now they've taken that, which was protecting, the guys that are doing the work, and they've pulled it and extracted it and included the silica into a lot of these hazardous material things, and that was never really what it was intended to do.
Well, just to kind of wrap this up, obviously, like I said, we're not going to cure cancer, right? But hopefully we get a lot of information out there, and then if anybody's watching and wants to, send us messages and questions they have about, the possible future mayor of Lakeway or, for you, and if they're looking to build a pool and what steps you take. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you before we kind of wrap this up with a bow is, if somebody does want to build a pool, let's just say I want to build a pool, right? Mm-hmm. I'm scared to death right now after just listening to this, mm-hmm. right? Now, whenever you're going to build a pool, you have certain steps that he was just talking about implementing. Those are the things that you would tell them. And I think one of the other things you told me was, if they're vetting different pool builders, what questions specifically should they ask?
Ask them how they're going to mitigate ASR.
Straight up.
Now, I have this conversation with every one of our clients. We're very transparent about what's happened. We're very transparent about the solution and how we've mitigated those practices during this time. But if you're interviewing a pool builder and you ask them, hey, how are you guys taking care of ASR? And they don't know what you're talking about, move to the next guy.
Okay.
Because that specific person, it may be just a sales guy, has not dealt with it. And so that's a problem because, again, the education of this phenomenon is just starting to bud. It's just starting to expand out. So there are a ton of people that don't know what to do, even builders. So if they don't, I feel like that might be something that you would want to either further research or, I hate to say consumer educating the builder, but you want to qualify your builder with this type of investment. I also want to say this, that there are pools that are elevated more than 6, 7, 8 feet off of the ground. If they are positive with ASR and they're that high above grade, there is a process of repair. If your vessel is actually meeting ground level or below grade, there's currently not a agreed upon fix because of exterior groundwater being able to still saturate the vessel
So
itself.
I'm screwed, but if you're raised 8 feet or more, you're good.
You could be, yes. So there are steps for that. So, again, good steps if you feel like you've been affected by this is to contact an engineer, get their professional opinion, contact your pool builder, let them know you think you know what's going on, be very transparent, let them know what's going on, and you'll find out quickly from your builder, I believe, whether they know what's going on or not. And then that way it can better direct you on what decisions to make moving forward.
And the big thing, too, is this. If you are selling your home and you are putting water into your pool above and beyond the normal amounts, let your realtor know. Let the next guy that buys your home, let him know. Do the right thing. Have integrity in that. And we are in a water shortage. Let's be cautious of that. And so if you're putting hundreds of gallons of water into your pool a week, you got a problem.
And the other thing, before we kind of wrap up, if an agent, that's, what I do is real estate and mortgages. And I know a lot of agents are kind of upset, not in a bad way, but just in the, I think this is kind of scaring people. If they see a little crack in a tile, if they see crack in, they're settling. There's cracks in pools. There's cracks.
There's hydration.
You know what I mean?
There's all kinds of cracks.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cracks, and I've seen it. I guess my advice from talking to pool builders is get an inspection.
Yes.
Take a look at the inspection. If the inspector thinks there's a possibility of getting ASR, it really might behoove you to get that test done so that you can give the person buying your house a little bit of a, hey, this is an ASR. It's a blanket.
And I will say this, that most engineers that are dealing with ASR, that are experts in the field, most of them are able to give you an on-site idea of what they think's going on. And most of the time, they're right. Now, I have had a situation to where an engineer misdiagnosed one of the pools that they looked at, and that's because they even did not know about ASR. And so when we started into the process, since then, they've actually, this is actually what's going on here. And so, again, they can also rule out ASR pretty quickly. These guys know, hey, this is an area where you've got a sprinkler sitting right next to this wall, and it's been going, for months at a time, and this soil has softened, and your deck lost about a 1/4 inch because it settled. There's things like that they can eliminate, ASR from and say this is actually what's going on. So just because you have a crack doesn't mean you have ASR. There's actually the volume of pools that's been built versus the percentage that are affected by ASR is probably actually much smaller than what we think, but it is a large number of pools affected. So, I wouldn't say don't overreact. Just be diligent, with the steps that you need to do. Contact your builder. Contact contact a licensed engineer, and that may take several weeks, but it's worth it, before you're moving forward on your next move.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think we got as much done as we can in one day, and I'm sure we'll get back together again and get out there and vote for you. When is that coming up?
May 6th.
May 6th is the day. All right. Cinco de Mayo, and then go vote.
That's right.
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much, and appreciate you.
Thank you, AJ.
All righty. Good talking to you guys.